You ever get that feeling, we live in this world that's just obsessed with being authentic, and yet our public life, our interactions, they can feel kind of empty, right? Well, today we're going to dig into a classic book by the sociologist Richard Sennett called The Fall of Public Man. And we're going to try and figure out why our public lives might be suffering from, believe it or not, too much personality.
Okay, so let's get right into it. We're going to start with what's really the central puzzle of our modern social lives. And look, it's a feeling you've probably had yourself, even if you couldn't quite put your finger on it. I mean, think about it. Everywhere you look, we're told to be our true selves, right? To share our feelings, be vulnerable, no matter where we are. Authenticity. It's like the new gold standard. But so why is it that all this self-disclosure, all this being real, so often leads to public spaces that just feel hollow, or political debates that sound less like policy and more like group therapy? That's it. That is the big mystery we are going to try and solve today. And this quote, wow, it just gets right to the heart of it all. What Sennett is arguing here is that our obsession with our own inner world, what I'm feeling right this second, has, ironically, made us less able to actually express ourselves in a meaningful way to other people, especially to strangers.
All right, so to find our first big clue in this whole mystery, we've got to jump in the time machine. We're going back to the 18th century. This was a time when cities were just exploding with people, full of strangers, and public life, well, it played by a completely different rulebook.
So, back in what they called the Ancien Regime, there was this really clear and, Sennett would say, very healthy line drawn in the sand. You can see it right here. On one side, you had the public world, the city, strangers. That world ran on performance, on impersonal rules. Then, on the other side, you had the private world, home, family. That's where you found intimacy and real, sincere feelings. Each had its own space, its own set of rules.
Yeah, the best way to think about this whole era is to imagine a theater. The world was literally a stage. Life out in public, among all those strangers, was a performance. You put on a public face, you wore a costume, you played a role. And here's the kicker. Nobody thought this was fake. Not at all. It was just a necessary social skill. And this gives you a great idea of how it all worked in practice. Your clothes, that was your costume. It told people your social role, not how you were feeling that day. Your body was basically a mannequin for decoration. And all of this whole shared code of being, well, artificial, that's what made it possible for a huge, diverse city full of strangers to actually interact with each other with some grace and civility. I mean, headdresses so tall women had to kneel to get through a door. That's commitment to the role. I love this quote. It's this piece of fatherly advice that just sums the whole thing up perfectly. He's telling his son, look, the public world is full of traps or snares. The only way to get through it is to wear a mask. Being impersonal wasn't about being cold. It was a survival tool. It was how you protected your true inner self from all the chaos of the city. Okay, so let's fast forward now. We're heading into the 19th century, and this is where everything, and I mean everything, gets turned on its head. The Industrial Revolution is roaring, it's changing the world, and a totally new kind of person starts to emerge, with a whole new way of thinking about the self. And here it is. This is the great reversal. You can see it right here on the screen. The focus shifts from the act to the actor. People stop caring about your public performance. Instead, they start obsessing over who you really are deep down inside. The whole belief system flips. Now, your appearance isn't seen as a construction anymore. Nope. Now it's a direct revelation of your unique inner soul. So what does that lead to? Well, it creates this new social anxiety, a culture of just intense scrutiny. Think about it. If every little thing about you, your clothes, your posture, reveals your very soul, then every single person you meet is basically trying to decode you, and you're doing the exact same thing to them. Public life suddenly becomes this really nerve-wracking detective game. And of course, who's the perfect embodiment of this new world? Sherlock Holmes. His whole method isn't just a clever trick for a book, you see. It perfectly captures the core belief of the 19th century, that the absolute smallest details, the sleeves, the thumbnails, even a bootlace, are the clues that unlock the truth of who a person really is on the inside. Okay, so that's the history. But what's the big so what? What are the consequences of this massive shift for us today? Well, according to Sennett, this obsession we inherited with personality and inner feelings, it's led to something he calls the tyranny of intimacy. So what on earth is the tyranny of intimacy? Well, it's what happens when we start demanding that our public life, our politics, our jobs, how we deal with strangers, has to satisfy our private emotional needs. It's this expectation that everything out there should make us feel authentic and psychologically whole. And when that boundary between public and private just collapses, you can see the fallout everywhere. We start judging politicians not on their policies, but on whether they seem real or authentic enough for us. A simple disagreement about, say, taxes can feel like a deep personal insult. And maybe most importantly, we start to lose that crucial skill of being able to work together with people we don't know or even people we don't like because we've forgotten the shared impersonal rules that make that possible. Now, Sennett warns that this ultimately leads to a kind of social narcissism. And we have to be clear here. He doesn't just mean vanity or taking selfies. He means it as a cultural condition where we get so absorbed in ourselves that we become blind to the world around us. We start seeing everything and everyone as just a reflection of our own feelings, and that makes it almost impossible to truly understand other people or tackle complex issues.
Okay, so let's circle all the way back and solve the mystery we started with. If this obsession with authenticity is the problem, then what's the solution? And I gotta warn you, Sennett's answer is pretty provocative.
Here's the big takeaway. The crucial point is this. Our public life feels so empty because we are burdening it with expectations it was never, ever meant to fulfill. We're asking politics, we're asking our cities to make us feel psychologically whole. And that's a job they just can't do. For public life to actually work, Sennett argues, it needs a dose of good old-fashioned impersonality. And that brings us to his definition of civility, which I think is just brilliant in its simplicity. For him, civility isn't about being nice or warm or pouring your heart out to everyone. No, it's simply the art of not making yourself a burden to others. It's about not inflicting your personality, your moods, and all your needs onto strangers. It's managing your own presence in a shared space. And so that leaves us with a final and pretty challenging question. We live in a world that is constantly demanding that we bring our whole selves to work, to politics, to, well, everywhere. But in that quest for total authenticity, have we maybe forgotten the valuable, civilized skill of wearing a mask? Have we forgotten that sometimes the most respectful, the most civil thing we can do for each other is to just play our part